أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صلى الله وسلم عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا رسول الله صلى الله وسلم عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله يا غريب يا مظلوم يا شهيد كربلاء يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ويطعمون الطعام على حبه مسكينا ويتيما وأسيرا إنما نطعمكم لوجه الله لا نريد منكم جزاء ولا شكورا. God states in the Holy Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and for the love of God, they feed the indigent, the orphan, and the captive. And they say, we feed you for the sake of God alone. We do not desire reward from you, nor thanks. Amanna billah, sadaqallahu al-aliyyul azim. Let us enliven our hearts and minds in our gathering with the remembrance of the Holy Prophet and his purified progeny. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. In life, there are two kinds of people. There are those, on the one hand, who live primarily for themselves. They are self-interested. Their primary concern in this life is their own personal and individual happiness, well-being, and success. And they don't care about others. It doesn't matter what the state of affairs is. It doesn't matter how people around me are doing. As long as I'm okay, as long as I'm full, as long as I'm successful, as long as I'm prosperous, I'm healthy, that's all that matters. And in fact, the Quran describes this kind of behavior. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ خُلِقَ هَلُوعًا. The human being is always impatient. Then the Quran says, إِذَا مَسَّهُ الشَّرُّ جَزُوعًا. When the human being encounters challenge, difficulty, evil, he or she is impatient, anxious. Right? We get stressed. We encounter difficulty, we get stressed. إِذَا مَسَّهُ الشَّرُّ جَزُوعًا وَإِذَا مَسَّهُ الْخَيْرُ مَنُوعًا. And when the human being encounters good fortunes, what does he do? He impedes, he withholds. This is what the Quran says. Right? We get upset when we face challenges, but when we face fortune and goodness and success and prosperity, what do? Suddenly we become greedy. We withhold. We impede. We don't want to help. We don't want to contribute. Right? And what's worse, this behavior, this self-interested behavior that some display, what's worse is when it's given a religious justification. Sometimes we display self-interest and selfishness and we give it religious flavoring. We give it a religious justification. There is someone who's in need, there's a particular cause, and I don't want to contribute, I don't want to give, right? And so I make up religious excuses. Someone is in need, I come across a poor person on the street, for instance, they're in need, and I don't want to give them, so I make all sorts of religious excuses. I say, you know what, I'm not going to give them because 100%, 1000% he's going to use it for alcohol, right? I make up religious justifications. And the Quran also describes this behavior in Surah Yasin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ أَنفِقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقَكُمُ اللَّهِ, when they are told, give from what God has given you, قَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَنُطْعِمُ مَنْ لَوْ يَشَاءُ اللَّهُ أَطْعَمَهُ. The reply is what? Should we give and contribute to the one whom God didn't give? Right? They put it on God. If God wanted, God could have given them. God didn't give them, so why should I give them, right? So you have those who live their lives primarily for themselves, concerned only about themselves. This is one kind of behavior. Then on the other hand, you have another kind of behavior, and that is those who live for themselves and for others. They recognize the importance of being responsive to the world around them. They recognize the importance of displaying care and concern and compassion and empathy and kindness to others and generosity. And we find some examples of this in our lives. I remember reading a story once about a teacher. This teacher, she relates the story. She says, I was working as a resource room teacher, and I was giving remedial classes. Students who have special educational needs, they would come to my class after school, and I would help them, right, with some of the learning and educational challenges that they had. She says, I was working in this position, and at some point, I noticed that I had a couple of new students. They started to attend my class. So I was excited. I have new students. I'm going to take the time and effort in order to take care of them, try to help them overcome their learning deficiencies and disabilities. So she says that one of the students in particular, after a while, after a few days, I noticed that he was doing very well. He was passing all of his exams. He was doing the work excellently. So I was a little astonished because it appeared to me that the student really wasn't having any issues. They're doing very, very well. So she says, I thought to myself, I have to figure out what is wrong with this child. So she spent extra effort in order to figure out what's wrong with this child. After a while, she noticed, no, there's nothing wrong with him. He's doing absolutely fine. He's excelling. So she says, I took him to the side one day. I took him to the side, and I asked him, I said, hey, listen, I want to ask you something. You're doing very well in my classes. Do you have an issue with like a learning disability or something? So the kid told her, he said, no, I don't have an issue. She told him, so why are you here? You're wasting my time and your time. You're wasting your parents' hard-earned money. Why are you attending these remedial classes? So he turns to her, he says, listen, teacher, I'll tell you, but I want you to promise not to tell anyone. She says, okay. He says, a couple of weeks back, my best friend in my class, the teacher figured out that he has some educational disabilities, some educational challenges. So she informed him, she told him that you need to take remedial classes. Go after school and take these classes. So my friend, he felt so ashamed that he was singled out. He felt so sad that he was singled out. So I saw this in my friend. So I went up to him and I said, hey, listen, buddy, it's no big deal. I have to go to these classes too. We'll go together. And so I started attending. You find there are some people, who are gifted with this capacity of care and concern for others. They don't just care about themselves. They care about others. They have a spirit of generosity. And they have a generosity of spirit. And they see service and giving and contributing and helping as a rewarding opportunity. Because sometimes for us, giving and service, we consider to be a burden, right? It's something I have to do. Oh, I have to help someone. I have to do this. I have to do that. For most of us, I have to do this. This is how we perceive service and giving and contributing and care, right? For others, they don't say, I have to do this. They say, no, I get to do this. For them, it's an opportunity. It's a rewarding opportunity. They feel a sense of growth when they help others, when they extend a hand. They say that Imam Ali alayhi salam, one day, he was seen being very sad. He was very, very sad. So some around him, they asked him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, why are you sad? And he replied, he said, I'm sad because it's been 7 days since we have had guests come over. It's been 7 days. We haven't hosted anyone. We haven't fed anyone. Imam Ali alayhi salam would be sad that he doesn't have the opportunity to host someone, to express kindness and generosity to others around him. In life, dear friends, we get what we put in. And helping others, assisting others, being responsive to the needs of others around us is a big part of being successful in this life and in the hereafter. The Quran reminds us, it says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. God says, you will never achieve righteousness, greatness, until you expend, you give from that which you love. Not just to give, not just to contribute, but the highest form of giving and contributing, from that which you love. Because in many cases it's easy for me to give from that which I don't love, that which I don't need. A lot of people, excellently, right? You know, you might have extra clothes, old items, and you donate them, you give them away, which is great, that's excellent. But how many of us are willing to give away that which we love, right? When it comes to money, who amongst us sitting here today does not love money? We all love money. All of us love money, right? We think about money every single day of our lives. In fact, we think about money every single hour of our lives. We keep opening our online banking app. We check our, balances. We check our stocks. We check our investments. We see it all day. Every waking hour of the day, we think about money. In fact, we even dream about money when we're asleep. We all love money. The Quran says if you want to attain righteousness, greatness, then you have to be willing to give from that which you love. To give from that which you love. To turn to others. To recognize the imperative of putting the needs of others, individuals, and others around you before your own needs. This is altruism. This is what is known in the tradition as ithar. Or at the very least, to be concerned for others. Not just to think of myself, but also to be concerned for helping others. Our teachings, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of traditions and reports that encourage us to work towards fulfilling the needs of others. This is what is known as qada'ul hawa'ij. They encourage us, they push us, they say to take up any opportunity to help someone fulfill a need, any need. Could be a small need, it could be a grand need. and you take part. Either you fulfill that need yourself, or if you're not able to fulfill that need yourself, to do what? To assist in fulfilling that need. To point someone in the right direction. To assist them in order so that they can fulfill this need. I'll give you one example. Just one example of the dozens of reports and traditions. This comes from the life of our second Imam, Al-Imam Al-Hasan alayhi salam. Al-Imam Al-Hasan one day is sitting in the masjid, in the mosque, and a man comes to him. And he says, Yabna Rasulillah, O grandson of the Messenger of God, I am in a major and urgent financial situation. I have a debt, and the person is coming to collect their debt, and they're very angry, they're upset, and it's very, very urgent, and I need some sort of assistance. I need your help. So Al-Imam Al-Hasan alayhi salam, he gets up, he stands up, and he starts to walk with the man towards the exit of the masjid. He has one of his companions with him, a man by the name of Maymun ibn Mihran. He's the one who relates this tradition. Maymun, he stands up, he says, Yabna Rasulillah, O grandson of the Messenger of God, hold on for a moment. He says, what is it? He tells him, did you forget that we are in a state of i'tikaf? For those who are unfamiliar with this term, i'tikaf is a kind of worship, something that is not very prominent in many circles. I'tikaf is when you spend a few days, like 3 days, in worship inside a prayer or a place of worship. You spend those entire 3 days, all those 3 days, you fast during the day and you pray during the night, and you don't leave. You don't do anything else. You just stop, you pause, in order to eat or in order to rest, but you don't leave the masjid. So this is i'tikaf. So Maymun ibn Mihran, he tells Imam Hassan, he says, hold on. You're proceeding towards the exit. Did you forget that we are in a state of i'tikaf? Imam Hassan tells him, oh Maymun, no, I did not forget. I know. However, I heard my father, Amir al-Mu'mineen, who heard from the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. He told him anytime, this is the hadith that the Prophet told Imam Ali and Imam Ali taught to Imam Hassan, anytime you have an opportunity to assist someone in fulfilling one of their needs, and you go ahead and you do so, God will reward you for that act as though you spent every day of 9,000 years in worship. Fasting every day for 9,000 years during the day, and praying every night for 9,000 years during the night. This is one tradition, only one tradition. And the other traditions, they remind us. You have an opportunity to help someone? Go ahead and help them. Don't even hesitate. Look out for them. You can't help them yourself. Point them in the direction of someone who can help them, assist them to fulfill a need. It could be any need. When it comes to serving others, individuals, brothers, sisters, in our faith, in humanity, when it comes to serving our community, that we are encouraged to volunteer our time, our efforts, our skills, our resources in order to contribute to our community. When it comes to our masajid, our masjids, our places of worship, we are encouraged to contribute, to offer whatever it is that we can. If it's money, you offer money. If it's skills, you offer skills. If it's time, you offer time. If it's other resources, you offer other resources. We find in some cases, in some communities, you have those who will come and they will attend the mosque or the Islamic center during certain seasons or throughout the year, which is excellent. It's great for us to be here. It's great for us to attend and to participate. But they attend with this idea that they are a guest there. They come as a guest. And when you go somewhere as a guest, you expect to be served, right? Guests don't serve themselves or serve others, right? When you go to a host, someone's hosted you, right? They will come and they will serve you. So some of us, we come to the masjid with the perception that I am a guest and I need to be served. Whereas when we come to places of worship, none of us are guests. This is all our place. The majlis of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam is each and every one of us our majlis. Why? Because Imam Hussein is our leader and our father. And this is why each and every one of us, young, old, man, woman, whatever situation and capacity we may be in, we have to dedicate something for Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. None of us are guests, brothers and sisters. We can all dedicate something. We can dedicate our time, we can dedicate our money, we can dedicate our skills. This is how we build community. This community is blessed with an army of volunteers, brothers and sisters. They don't receive recognition, but I want to take a moment and I want to say something here. People who spend their time, hours of their day, they spend their money, their resources, their hard-earned money. They use their skills. They use their efforts in order to what? In order to arrange, in order to set up, in order to direct. You have people who are outside. People who spend their entire time outside, they're directing traffic and parking. You don't think they want to be inside and they want to participate in the majlis of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein? Of course they do. But what do? They spend their time and their effort in order to serve the community. Those who prepare food, those who set up, those who clean up, right? Those who contribute. And so it is incumbent upon us from the bottom of our heart and sincerely to say thank you to them. We say thank you to the volunteers. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless them and to bless their families and to give them the best of this world and the next. But this is all of our majlis, brothers and sisters, each and every one of us. None of us here is a guest. And so we have to dedicate something of our time, of our effort, of our resources. We build community. This is our house. This is our place. This is what we are instructed and encouraged to do. This is what it means to be part of a community. And we don't have to necessarily focus on the big, because when we talk about caring and contributing and giving and being responsive to my community and the needs of others, oftentimes the first thing that comes to mind is I have to contribute a lot. It's the amount that is expected of me. And this is what we see. Turn on the news, open the newspaper. Usually, those things that make the headlines are the grand things, right? You hear about someone who's contributed $50 million to this project or done this huge sort of act of generosity. That's what you see on the headlines. You don't see a headline that talks about someone giving $10, right? People don't want to hear about that. We focus on the big. But one of the beautiful aspects of our Islamic teachings and religious tradition is that it always encourages us never to underestimate and belittle the quote-unquote small. What we see as small in our eyes, if done with sincerity and goodness in the eyes of God, is grand. I remember reading a story once about a king who lived long ago, a mighty and powerful king. And he decided that he wanted to build a grand mosque in his city, in his capital. So he went out and he announced to people, to his subjects, he said, listen, I am embarking on building this grand mosque, and this entire mosque is going to be funded and sponsored by me and me alone. I prohibit anyone from contributing at all. This is my project. And so he began the project. Began to construct the mosque, the grand mosque. And at the entrance of the mosque, he put up a big billboard, a big sign that said, "This mosque is being funded and sponsored by King so-and-so." He went to sleep one night and he saw a dream that an angel descended to this construction site and he erased the name of the king and he wrote the name of a woman, so-and-so. So he woke up, he turned to his advisors, he said, "I want you to go and check on my mosque project. Tell me what you see on the sign." So they went and they saw nothing, it's fine, his name is still there. They came back to him, they said, "Your Majesty, your name is still up there." He went to sleep a second time that night, he had the same dream. Second morning he goes, he asks his advisors to go back to check on the mosque. They notice the sign is still the same. It still has his name on there. For a third time, he has the same dream. He wakes up and he's in shock. And so he turns to his advisors and he says, "You know, in the dream, the name of the woman is mentioned. So I want you to find me this woman." He mentioned her name. "Find me this woman and bring her to me. I want to talk to her." So they went out into the town and they asked until they found the woman so-and-so, the daughter of so-and-so. They found an old, poor woman. So they told her, "Are you so-and-so?" She said, "Yes." They told her, "The king has summoned you. He wants to speak with you." She said, "The king wants to speak with me?" They said, "Yes." Okay. So she accompanied them. She went back. The king asked her, he said, "Are you so-and-so?" She said, "Yes." Said, "Do you know about the great mosque project in this city?" She said, "Yes." He said to her, "Do you know about my prohibition that anyone contributes to this project, that it's mine and mine alone?" She said, "Yes, I heard." He asked her, "Have you contributed anything?" She laughed. She said, "King, look at me. I'm an old, feeble, weak woman. I have no money. What am I going to contribute?" He asked her, "Have you even come near this project?" She said, "Well, one day I was walking by the construction site and I noticed that one of the animals that carries the construction materials, the heavy load, it was tied to a pole and it looked like it was very thirsty. And there was a bucket of water, but because it was tied to the pole, it could not reach the bucket of water. So I went and I picked up the bucket and I put it next to it so that it could drink." The king smiled. He said, "Now it's very clear. Now I know exactly what's going on." Said to her, "For this act of yours, I pronounce that my advisors go, they remove my name from the mosque and they write your name on the mosque." She said, "Why would you do that?" He told her, "Because when I built this mosque, I built it so that everyone can come and see and say, 'Oh, mashallah, long live the king. He built such a beautiful mosque for us.' But your act was an act of compassion and empathy and kindness, and it was a sincere act. So you are more deserving of praise." Our traditions, they tell us, don't belittle the small. Do what you can, participate in whatever capacity that you are able to. And the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, they are the best examples for us when it comes to service and community, brothers and sisters. The Prophet himself, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, the Prophet himself shows us, he displays for us this spirit of generosity. When you read about his life, when he first arrives to the city of Medina, one of the very first things they do, the community does, is they build a mosque. The Prophet himself, with his own hands, he partakes, he participates. He doesn't stand aside and give orders and commands. You do this, you do that. He himself, with his own hands, he participated in the building of the masjid. When they would go out and they would travel to various places, the Prophet himself, he would participate. When they needed to camp, they needed to stop, they needed to eat, the Prophet himself would participate in preparing the food, in helping set up camp, and pick up. The Prophet himself, in his own home, the Prophet himself would participate. He would contribute to the building of his home and the maintenance of his home, to the cooking and the cleaning and the helping and assisting. The Prophet shows us this spirit of generosity, where it's not just about myself, where I don't think of myself as someone who is always served by others, but I also serve, I also contribute, I also give. And he, throughout his life, he encourages his followers to do the same, brothers and sisters. In his famous sermon, when he welcomes the holy month of Ramadan, that famous sermon, right? He welcomes the holy month of Ramadan and he describes to his followers the beauty of the month of Ramadan. The blessings of the month of Ramadan, that its days are the best of days, its nights are the best of nights, its hours are the best of hours. And he encourages his followers to take advantage of this month. And he encourages them to display generosity. In a beautiful line, he says, اتَّقُوا النَّارَ وَلَوْ بِشِقِّ تَمْرَةٍ. He says, preserve yourselves and achieve salvation with God, even if it means that you offer a piece of date, not an entire date, a piece of date, in generosity to someone for them to break their fast. You have one date, you split it in half, and you offer it to someone else at the time of breaking fast so that they can eat. Then he says, اتقوا النار ولو بشربة من الماء. And achieve salvation with God even by offering a sip of water. You know, when you're fasting throughout the whole day during the month of Ramadan, and you're hungry and you're thirsty, and it's the time of Maghrib, you know that first sip of water, when you have it, that feeling that you have, you can feel the water go down all the way. You can feel it. You can feel how good it feels after having fasted the entire day, several hours. If this is the case with someone who has spent a few hours of the day fasting, then what will water do for the one who hasn't had water for 3 days? What would water do for them? Imam Hussein and his companions and family were thirsty for 3 days. They had nothing. And what is the reward of the one who quenches the thirst of those who are thirsty? What is the reward of the one who we call as-Saqqa? Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas ibn Amir al-Mu'minin. He goes to his brother, Imam Hussein, and he tells him, my dear brother, Aba Abdullah, allow me to go out onto the battlefield. Imam Hussein hears his brother Abbas ask him for permission. And he's broken. He begins to weep. He says, my dear brother, you are my standard bearer. If you go out onto the battlefield, who is going to be left? Who is going to remain with me? Who is going to protect the women and the children? Abu al-Fadl says, Ya Aba Abdullah, please allow me to go out. I cannot stand it anymore. I have to go out. I have to fight for this cause. Imam Hussein is reluctant to let his brother go, so he tells him, Oh Abbas, I will give you permission to go, but I want you to do one favor for me before you go out. I want you to go out to the river and bring water to the thirsty women and children. You hear their cries. You hear them crying, Al-Atash, Al-Atash. We are thirsty, we are thirsty. So Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, he gets onto his horse and he rides valiantly towards the river bank. The tradition says that he is able to break through the enemy lines. After all, this is the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He breaks through the enemy lines. He arrives to the river bank. He comes down from the river and he places his hand in the water. Al-Abbas has also not had a drop of water for 3 days. He is also thirsty himself. At this moment, he remembers Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, he remembers Sukaina, he remembers Zainab, he remembers the rest of the women and children, that they are also thirsty. So he throws the water, he puts it back down, and he tells himself, he says, "Oh self, how do you dare drink water when the women and children are thirsty?" He fills the water container and then he gets back onto the horse and he begins to ride, to gallop back towards the camp of Imam Hussein. When Umar bin Sa'ad sees this, he says, that's it. He calls his army. He says, "I want you to surround him. There is no way that Abbas gets back to the camp." They begin to surround him from every direction. They surround him from every direction. Abbas fights back valiantly. He is courageous. The tradition says that one of them, he comes towards Abbas and he strikes him on his right hand, cutting it off. At this point, Abbas, he is determined. He takes the water container in his left hand, the tradition says, and he continues forward toward the camp of Imam Hussein. Another comes and he strikes him on his left hand. Abbas alayhi salam, he is determined to arrive. He hears the children's cries, Al-Atash, Al-Atash. So he takes the water container, the tradition says, he places it in his mouth and he continues to proceed towards the camp. The enemies, they surround him from every direction. They begin to strike him with spears and with arrows. One of the arrows, it hits his chest, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. He is wounded. Another comes and he strikes Abu al-Fadl with a pole and he causes him to fall. Another arrow comes and it strikes the water bag, causing the water to be dispersed. At this moment, Abbas, he's on his own. He stops in his tracks and he calls out to his brother. He says, "Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah, akhi adrik akhak." Peace be upon you, O Aba Abdullah. He calls upon him, "Come to me." Imam Hussein is watching from a distance. How does he know where Al-Abbas is? Because Abbas is the standard bearer. He has the flag with him. Imam Hussein suddenly sees the flag fall. He comes rushing towards his brother. As he comes closer, suddenly he sees one of Abbas's hands on the side. He then comes closer, he sees another of Abbas's hands on the side. He comes closer, he sees his brother Abu al-Fadl on the ground. He goes towards him, he calls out, "Oh Abbas, akhi, al-an qad inkasara dhahri wa qallat hilati." My brother, now my support has gone. I have no one left after you. He kneels down to him. He takes his head. Al-Abbas is not able to see. He doesn't know who it is. Imam Hussein wipes the dust and the blood off of his face. Abbas looks up and he says, "My brother Hussein." Abbas was so respectful of his brother that he would always call him Aba Abdullah. He would always call him my master. But at this point he says, "My brother Hussein." Al-Hussein alayhi salam, he says, "My brother, allow me to carry you to take you back to the campsite. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, he tells him, my brother, no, please leave me here. Do not carry me back to the camp. He asks him, he says, why? He says, because I made a promise to the woman and the children to bring them water. How can I come back empty-handed? After a few moments, Abu Abdullah al-Hussein is seen. He is coming back to the campsite all alone. Zainab comes out. Sukaina come out. They are anticipating. They are waiting for Abu al-Fadl to come back. They see Imam Hussein all alone. Zainab calls out, wa akha wa abbasa. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. صلى الله وسلم عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. صلى الله وسلم عليك وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين. All together, brothers and sisters. وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. And for the souls of all of the mu'mineen and mu'minat, the departed, the marhumin, let us recite Surah Al-Fatiha مع الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على